Hello, everybody. My name is Dean of the InkGuild, and welcome back to another episode of Shorthand. Today, we're going to be looking back at episode 10, where Gabe and I talk with two friends of mine from high school, Everest and Morgan of the Soibois, as a follow-up to Gabe and I's original episode on the best video game stories. So, because Gabe and I had already done an episode, we let Morgan and Everest speak. So this is going to be their time to share their favorite video game stories and their respective reasons as to why. If you like the episode, give it a like. Listen back on the original episode by finding it on our channel. All of our description, including the Soibois, is down in the description below. And with all that being said, let's get into the highlights. We've got Everest and Morgan from the Soibois. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Everest. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Everest.
And howdy, I'm Morgan.
I guess I'll just start with probably the biggest one, which is my first pick being Persona 3.
Yes! Don't worry, I'm also pogging off in the inside.
While it probably has the worst gameplay out of the Persona games to happen after Persona 2, because there's a very clear divide between Persona 1 and 2 and then 3 to 5. It definitely, in my opinion, has the best story. The thing, first of all, that I really like just about like the Persona series, especially after like 3 to 5, is that Persona 3 to 5, they kind of like picked a color and then just decided to base the entire game off of that color. And then Persona 3 decided to go with a blue color palette. And blue represents like sadness and, you know, that like it's a sad game. Persona 3 is a very sad game. Basically, the story of Persona 3 goes that you are just a random teenager or a high school student that gets pretty much like drafted into this club at his new school, where the club pretty much goes out and kills evil shadows that try to like kill humans. The game kind of sets up this idea where at the end of every day, once it hits midnight, there's actually an extra hour called the midnight hour. Is it called?
Yes.
Or the dark hour? So it's the dark hour, and so during this hour, normal people go like don't know it exists, but special people who have personas can stay awake during this dark hour, and they can fight off the shadows that are trying to like kill humans. And the game runs on a calendar system, and at the end of every month, every full moon, like a huge bad shadow shows up, and then the team has to kill it. And these ramp up in difficulty as the year goes by. And then eventually, when you kill the last one, the team accidentally unleashes the God of Death, and the God of Death essentially gives them a choice, where he says, either I can like the world is going to end in like a month, and either I can like make you guys forget your memories of everything that happened, and you guys will blissfully be unaware of the end of the world, and you can live the rest of your you can live the last month of your life in happiness. Or the other option is that you can choose to fight the God of Death. The big like theme of the whole story is death, and how the main theme of the story is basically like how people deal with death and how people like mourn over death and the loss of loved ones. And pretty much every single party member in the game, which there's like 10 of them, all through the course of the story go through their own like major like somebody they love died. Everybody has somebody they love died. And it kind of goes like into how every character individually deals with it, and then how the whole group together ends up like dealing with the loss of their loved ones as a whole, like together. And it's just it's awesome. It's again, I'm summarizing 100 hours of gameplay into like 5 minutes, but that's kind of like the gist of it.
I guess moving on to Morgan's first pick. What would
Okay,
your pick
so
be?
I'm gonna go small. Actually, I'm probably gonna go like a little bit smaller, just because the other two I feel like I could expand into it. I'm gonna talk about one of my like favorite just games of all time. It's definitely up there, top 3. You've probably heard of this because it's one of the biggest indie darlings ever to hit the scene. It's a game called The Binding of Isaac, and I guess more specifically, I'm going to be talking about its remake, The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, and the following expansions, Afterbirth and Afterbirth Plus. And so the reason why I really like Isaac's story is because I'm a big sucker for story through gameplay. If you're able to sell a story to me, as much as I love like Last of Us and like Uncharted, like I like my story to be more like, oh, I can read into this mechanic and it gives me a lot of insight. You get that with Isaac, whether it be the items, the characters themselves, like their stats and whatnot, or an item in the game. Because a lot of it is not given. All that is given at the start, because there's a little like cutscene that narrates the beginning of basically Isaac lives alone with his mother on top of a hill, and Isaac, likes keeping to himself, just drawing, playing with his toys, and one day his mom discovers God, more or less, and becomes infatuated with the idea that just God is right, God is just. And so she starts hearing God. And God's telling her to do all these stuff to the point where Isaac's now just isolated, no toys, no games. But yeah, essentially it goes to the point where God's like, this is not enough. I need you to sacrifice your son to prove that you love me. And so the basis of the game is Isaac's running from his mother, who's trying to kill him because she has gone whack. And so you don't get a lot of the backstory until you unlock items and you read into it. Because the game technically has, I think, 17 endings or something nutty like that.
It's like it's like in the 20s now.
Yeah, it gives a little explanation to a simple part of the backstory. And so, full spoiler alert, you don't really you won't really figure it out until you look at the items. I think, in my opinion, the items are the best way of telling stories. And it's not like Dark Souls where you could look at a single item and you can make a 40-minute lore video out of it. As much as I love Dark Souls, that's kind of dumb. But anyways, a big factor in Isaac's mom going crazy is that her and her Isaac's dad had a divorce, and he left them. And so there's a lot of items that I feel like are pretty symbolic and pretty awesome. One of my favorite items in general for storytelling is Isaac's key. And so I didn't really explain the gameplay, but the gameplay is like a top-down roguelike where you're just trying to reach the final boss and just beat them. And you just go room to room, kind of like a Zelda dungeon. And so what Dad's key does, so it's such an awesome way of just describing how Isaac's dad just leaves them. He just opened the door and left. Because Dad's key just lets you open every door that is in a special room, and you can just leave. And stuff like that, just using mechanics to tell characters, character moments and such, is very awesome. And you attack you with your tears, so there's a lot of items that just make Isaac cry. Another part of it is Isaac gets abused a lot. And so there's a lot of mom-related items that just get used to abuse him. There's an item called Mom Spoon. It gives you speed up. And what it does, a lot of items change how you look. And so what Mom Spoon does implies Isaac's mom's beating him with a spoon, thus increasing his speed up. There's also a coat hanger, which goes through Isaac's skull and causes him to cry more. Tears up, fire rate up. And yeah, oh god, I could just go on and on and on. But there's
hundreds of items in Isaac, and all of them have connections like that. It's
I guess something to note is the significance of incorporating a lot of lore into items that could pretty much what am I trying to get at? I guess it's making meaning out of nothing, I guess. With hearing that and hearing how significant everything kind of plays into the story and how almost everything plays into like weaving into the narrative properly. It makes me think of video games that kind of incorporate lore into the story, but none of it is kind of significant in a way. Like I like, if I can think of it, like Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, they typically like pepper their entire landscape full of like random stories from survivors or anything. And to be honest, like it's a nice way of expanding the world, but it doesn't really give you a lot of like it's kind of things that you could just like pick up and think, oh, that's cool, that how they incorporated that kind of story into the world to help it make it feel more alive. But like hearing how you're talking about Isaac and how everything ties into Isaac's story, like that's really interesting, and that's I think a little bit cooler compared to making the world feel more alive. It's making everything significant and making, I guess, everything just work towards telling the story of this character. So those were our first set of picks. Everest, what would be your second pick?
I was gonna save this one for last, but I think it just ties in so well with what we're talking about with Binding of Isaac. I'm probably just gonna go with it right now. But my second pick would be Outer Wilds. It's entirely exploration and puzzle solving, and it's really cool because it's essentially a Metroidvania that's done through, instead of getting upgrades, you acquire knowledge, if that makes sense.
Oh.
And I'll kind of explain that with like the story, because essentially in Outer Wilds you're playing a story that's already happened and you're dealing with the aftermath. Because like in Outer Wilds you play as this cadet on this planet called Timberhearth, and he's like basically the newest recruit in Timberhearth's space program. And as far as his story goes, he is just a guy that's the newest recruit, and he's been training for years to go venture off into space, and today is the day that he's going to do it, and he's finally going to venture off into space. And so you spend the first few bits of the game just kind of like learning the controls and exploring the planet until finally you get access to your ship. And then immediately you can fly your ship out into the solar system, which, by the way, the entire solar system like seamlessly works with no loading screens. Like you just fly up into space, you see a planet, you can go and land on it, and there's no loading screens or anything in between. It's insane. And then you're just allowed to explore the universe, pretty much, like the solar system, until 20 minutes happen and the sun explodes and you die. That's basically how your first run through will always work. You can die beforehand, but that's pretty much how like everyone's run through happens. And then you realize that after dying in the sun explosion, or beforehand, if you like mess up your flying or something, or you make a bad jump, you wake up again and you're back where the game started, where you're just a new recruit getting ready to fly a space. And you keep doing this and you realize that your character is inside of a time loop where every 20 minutes the sun explodes, you die, and you're sent back 20 minutes before the sun explodes. And your goal in the game is to explore the universe, figure out why the sun is exploding, and try and stop it from exploding. I'm holding back details because I don't want to spoil everything, because the entire game is like built off the knowledge that you know nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just like it was like probably like one of my favorite gaming experiences that I've had in a long. Playing that game was kind of mind-blowing, and I'd even go so far as to say it was like almost life-changing.
Oh, really?
Just because like I want to be a game developer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like playing that game just kind of made me like completely rethink everything I thought I knew about game design and how to like build a world and how to build mechanics and that sort of stuff.
Morgan, what would your second pick be?
Okay, so I should have probably done this first if we're gonna segue better, because the game I'm picking is more because of the characters and such. But I'm pretty sure you guys know this. This is probably one of the more bigger series now that the latest iteration on the Switch came out. But today, for tonight, I want to be talking about Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones. The reason why I love it is because a lot of stories get elevated by characters. Now, Everest was talking about Persona 3 and the best part being in the characters. And I'm going to go a little bit weird here. The main characters for Sacred Stones are absolute garbage. They are a pair of twins, Erica and Ephraim. They're basically the Wonder Twins, if anyone knows what those names are. They are lukewarm and awful. A lot of the appeal for me for the characters comes from the antagonist and the supporting cast.
Mm.
And so I know this is a trope nowadays. This is a turn-based RPG, by the way. Like, it's turn-based strategy RPG. And this is a done trope, but one of the secondary villains, Walter, is the best example of a super beefed up villain who can one-shot everyone. He is introduced wiping out like half of your units because he's just cool as hell. And I remember 6-year-old Morgan, not legally, mind you, playing this game on his computer, was so blown away at how cool that archetype is. And I'm pretty sure there's way better examples of that archetype, but he was the first for me, and he easily gave a lasting impression. And so there's villains like him. There's supporting characters like LaRachel, who I don't even know how to describe LaRachel. She's easily one of my favorite Fire Emblem waifus. Where
Would you have to go into the mic for that?
Yeah, she's a nutter. She is absolutely insane. She brings her, because she's also like she's not a princess per se, but she is royalty in some fashion. And she brings her retainers everywhere because she can sense adventure. And she wants to be a part of the action. So there's characters like her. There's characters like Lute, who she's also waifu contender. Because she's just a sassy magic user. No, she's not a nutter. She's like the opposite. She's just like, she's just smug, and I love it.
All right.
Yeah, and then there's, I think this is the last character I'm going to have to talk about. All I'm saying is all the characters are great, but this one minor character, Orson, is easily one of my favorite Fire Emblem characters. Because, okay, keep in mind, for future talk about this, this is a rated E game, but Orson was originally a retainer for Eric and Ephraim. Later on, you find out that he betrays you. He sells you out to the villains like Walter and such, because they promised him that they would resurrect his dead wife. And so they kind of do. They get a necromancer, they raise his wife from the dead. But she is nothing but a vegetable zombie. She can only say one word, which is his name. Orson. Just keeps on repeating that. And it is heavily implied that due to the rage and anger, Orson just basically does some sexual assault on her.
Rated E for everyone.
Yeah, we need to remember that.
But yes, Sacred Stones, it's easily not the best, but is my favorite in terms of storytelling. Because, or like not even storytelling, it's just most memorable because it has some of the best characters, for sure.
I guess while we're on the topic, like outside of Fire Emblem, like what's your guys' favorite video game villain? Right, because that's just a way of good like storytelling, right? Like it's left an impression on you just how much of a villain this person was, right?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that for a while. That's like asking someone like what their favorite song is. Like you got to think about that for months.
Yeah. I mean, like it could even just be like the first one that comes to your mind, right? Like for me, the first one that comes to my mind is Baldur from God of War 2018.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's pretty solid. I guess. Well, he became more of like not hero, but he became more of just like a proper side character. But in the first game, Goro Majima of the Yakuza series.
Yes, my boy, best boy.
So essentially, his gimmick is he's insane. He is called the Mad Dog of Shibano because he has an eye patch and he just goes wild with a knife. He is utterly insane, and the reason why I love him so much is because he's essentially just the Japanese Joker.
Everest, I guess that leaves you. Do you have, I guess, like an impressionable or like a video game villain that pops into your head?
I was thinking about that, and like all the ones I can think of off the top of my head are kind of like spoilers for their corresponding game, so I'll stay away from those. But I know that's a good one that like really sticks out. One that really sticks out that I really like that isn't like really spoilery is GLaDOS from the Portal series. I think GLaDOS is an awesome villain. Just like I mean, the first game she's just like funny, like she's just enjoyable, and I feel like that's like a big thing with villains is like you want them to be enjoyable. Like even though they're the bad guy, you don't want them to like be boring.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And GLaDOS is very much like the opposite of that. Like she for being an AI, she has such a personality, and she's always like making sassy remarks at your character, and she's always like making these like dry jokes that are even drier because of just the atmosphere and the absolute silence from Aperture.
All right. I guess with all that being said, let's move into our final set of picks. And I guess Everest, since you had posed such a good segue, let's talk about your final pick. Which one would that be?
Final pick. This one will probably be a quick one because it's like I can run through it quickly. There's no like crazy overarching themes and 5 games in the series that I have to go through in 5 minutes. So my last pick is BioShock. Which, yeah.
Not too
nice.
So BioShock is a game about a dude that quote unquote accidentally stumbles into a underwater city that was created by the great Andrew Ryan, who attempted to create a society away from like basically he tried to create a society away from society. Mm-hmm. That's like the easiest way to put it. It worked for a while and it stopped working and the whole city went nuts and its denizens all became like crazy junkies and the whole city got like pretty much destroyed and torn down. And that's where your character shows up in this destroyed, torn down city. You get to see how like far gone this city has become, and you find like audio logs and you see like pictures of like what it used to be and how great it probably was at the time. Mm. And to see it now in this state, like you keep getting like you just keep asking yourself questions that don't really get answers, but I think that's like even cool. I think that makes it even cooler. And like you just meet a lot of really cool characters, and the big spoiler alert, the big twist at about the halfway point through the game is brilliant and is so cool, and is like one of the probably my favorite twists in like gaming history. Mm-hmm. That being that the whole time you've been guided by this character called Apollo, and he's been like telling you to do stuff, and he's this like
Apollo? I thought it was Atlas.
Oh, Atlas. I got the two confused. Yeah, no, there's no Apollo. It's Atlas. They both start with A. I got confused. It's Atlas. He tells you, and like he always starts his sentence, or he always like whenever he asks you to do something, he says like, "Hey, would you kindly do this?" And it's just like, you know, that's just his thing. He just says that.
Yeah, it's.
And then you find out, and then you find out that it's like basically a code word, and that your character is actually like basically a sleeper agent that's conditioned to do whatever they're told after being said, like after being told, "Would you kindly?" That's like the key word, and you doing stuff, and you find that out at the halfway point of the game, and it's kind of mind blowing because you realize like, he did say "would you kindly" a lot. And even like going back and like second playthroughs, you can find the phrase "would you kindly" like everywhere in the game, and it's so cool. And it brings up another term that I'm sure you guys are familiar with, but it's a ludonarrative dissonance. You guys are familiar with that term, which I love. You know, game like as like a wannabe game designer, I love talking about ludonarrative dissonance because for those who don't know what it is, it's essentially the idea that like gameplay and story are like two different things, and they don't like really interact with each other. For instance, like in Mario, if Mario was a story, Mario wouldn't be able to like see his coin counter every time he picks up a coin. Like that wouldn't make sense. Mm-hmm. But the player needs to see that for like the gameplay to make sense. So that's kind of the idea between ludonarrative dissonance. It's the same thing in like games where you're given like a compass or like a mini map with like markers that show you where to go. Like the real character wouldn't be able to see that. And so it doesn't really make sense. Mm-hmm. But BioShock having that twist makes like parts of it like it kind of gets rid of that ludonarrative dissonance, because like you're technically like you're literally being told what to do and you have to do it because like that's how the story works. Like that's your character has been conditioned to do stuff when being told "would you kindly." And I love that twist. That's like one of my favorite twists in video game history.
That's such a good game. That's a good way to kind of end off Everest's picks. It's a really
thank you.
Yeah. All right, Morgan. What would your third and final pick be for this episode?
Okay, unlike Everest, I decided to leave the biggest one for the end.
I don't know. BioShock was pretty big.
BioShock's pretty big, but I mean in terms of story. Mm-hmm. And I kind of broke my rule when thinking of games to pick of no visual novels. And the game I decided to pick is a game called 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors. Or, well, 999. You could rearrange all those words. The reason why I love this game is it just plays around with the idea of visual novels and being able to just randomly go on random routes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually... And so through one route... Okay, so let me say here. There's like a requirement like, oh, hey, you had to see this scene in order to continue in this route. And throughout the game, the characters will kind of go, wait, how do you know this? Why do you know we would have to do this and this? And he just goes, I don't know. And all I'm going to tell you is it has to do with the mechanics of being able to select different routes at a time because it's a visual novel.
Mm-hmm.
And 999, like, it is easily, because I haven't played Outer Wilds, so I can't comment on Outer Wilds, but it is easily, at the time when I first played it back in 2010, 2011, it was life-changing, and I think it still, to this date, is still one of the most smartly written games. When games mess around with the mechanics, and keep in mind, this is a visual novel, there's not many mechanics that you can think of, but once you play 999, you're going to go, oh, this is really smart and really well written. Do keep in mind, this game was released on I believe it was released on Vita, but it was released on the PlayStation 4 and Steam. And but it was originally developed for the DS. There are some mechanics and some, smartly written things that do not translate well to the ports. Like, I will say the game does make good use of the DS dual screen. And unfortunately, that does get lost in translation. Also, another great example of just fun characters and like really well done characters.
We'll see. Yeah, like, isn't it interesting just how far like video game storytelling has come, right? Like, I guess with visual novels, like, some people would think that a visual novel isn't really a video game, but like, I'm one of the people that do consider it as it. And like, how many avenues you can take with like interactive storytelling in a video game, like, it's certainly come a long way, and for better or for worse. Like, it seems to me that 999, I guess after hearing you say it, like, it's definitely one of the better examples of like interactive story based video games or like visual novels or anything. Like, we joked about Doki Doki earlier. That seems to be it had its moment, but now it's just been overdone to death. And video games used to start out as Mario just getting from point A to point B, rescuing Princess Peach, but now it's whole like book worthy narratives, right?
Yeah.
And I know,
a long way from Pong.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I guess to like,
I was just gonna say, we got a long way from, what was it, Everest? Space Wars?
Yeah, Space
like
Wars.
Asteroids, Pac-Man. Like, there was like, it used to be just something for fun, but nowadays,
actually,
like,
Pac-Man was actually iconic for being one of the few. Yeah, like, it was revolutionary for being one of the few games at the time to actually have a story and a narrative, which is really
it had
interesting
cutscenes.
to look back at that. It was one of the first video games to ever have cutscenes.
oh, that's fair.
So, like, that's
But
how
you get what I mean,
We've
right?
gone from the little cutscenes to Pac-Man to, like, stuff like, God of War and 999.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess basically the point I'm trying to make is that, like, it's come so far. Like, you can include, some people might be a little bit iffy on it, but, I consider visual novels video games, right? Like, you're playing through someone's story. That is what it is, right?
Yep.
And, from the BioShocks to the God of Wars and whatever, like, storytelling in video games, like, it's like people, like, I guess because people have been taking it a lot more seriously lately, like, you have some really good performances that you would find in movies through voice acting. Like, Ashley Birch is my favorite voice actress, I think, hands down, bar none, right?
She's pretty awesome.
Yeah, like, and like, it's really through video game storytelling that she's been able to thrive through that, right? And that's just with her. Like, you have Christopher Judge, who's found his acclaim through Star Trek, who has found a new kind of leash on life, I guess, as Kratos in God of War.
Oh my god, he is Kratos.
Yeah, like, and you have and you guess, like, you even have like megastars even in Nolan North and Troy Baker, right? Like, there like video game storytelling has become like such a huge thing, and there will always be enough stories to talk about it. But I guess for this episode right now, let's call it for the night.